Bonjour à tous, bienvenue dans votre nouveau programme en ligne, les discussions d'Eurogip. Notre objectif est d'aborder les risques professionnels dans un contexte international, en particulier européen. Bonjour William, merci beaucoup d'avoir accepté notre invitation. Vous nous faites l'honneur d'être le premier invité de notre nouveau programme, les discussions d'Eurogip. Pouvez-vous vous présenter brièvement?
So it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon and to come back in this new format. It's a long time since we've been collaborating and a real honor. And for me in this new capacity, since the middle of October, I'm the executive director of the European Agency for Safety and Health at Work. My name is William Cockburn Salazar. I've been in the interim position for 25 months. And actually working here at the agency in Bilbao since 1998, so 25 years. EU-OSHA was set up as an initiative of the European Commission in the times of Jacques Delors, when they were searching for social Europe. And it was one of a number of new agencies that were set up by a council decision of 1994. And in 1996, the agency started work here in Bilbao, a location selected by the Spanish government. It had as its mission to monitor the situation, to collect examples of good practice, to raise awareness about health and safety at work. Quite an ambitious mandate to provide data and technical information to all who have an interest in health and safety at work. And now, 25 years on, we're 66 people. We have an annual budget of 17 million euros. And our work, I think, we can describe it in three main pillars. And the first one is collecting data, carrying out analysis and research to support evidence-based policy making. And the second pillar would be to help preventive action, preventive measures in Europe's enterprises. So that's by producing guidance, examples of good practice, developing e-tools, electronic tools, and so on. And then the third pillar is to generally raise awareness and contribute to a positive prevention culture. So through campaigning, through networking and so on. And those are the three main areas that we work on. And I would just add one thing that makes EU-OSHA unique amongst the 50 nearly European agencies. And that is that we have a network of national focal points. In France, it's the French Ministry for Labour, and each focal point has a network with the social partners, with workers' representatives and employers' representatives, and that's the only one of all of the agencies, and that really enables us to have an impact which is beyond what you could expect from our small size. Eurofound is older. It was founded in 1974 as one of the very first agencies, and it has a very broad remit. It's looking at working conditions, which means that they work in some similar areas to us, but also industrial relations and monitoring industrial relations across Europe, across all aspects, and also quality of life. And Eurofound is a more research and policy-led agency. They don't have a mandate of providing tools and guidance and examples of good practice, or of generally raising awareness in the way that we do through awareness-raising campaigns. So they have a more policy information focus.
Les campagnes lieux de travail sain sont votre activité phare en matière de sensibilisation. Elles constituent le principal moyen de faire passer votre message dans les lieux de travail à travers l'Europe. La campagne actuelle sensibilise à l'impact des nouvelles technologies numériques sur le travail et les lieux de travail, ainsi qu'aux défis et opportunités qui en découlent en matière de santé et de sécurité au travail. Elle fournit également une plateforme pour l'échange de solutions de bonnes pratiques.
This was highlighted already in the EU Strategic Framework 2021 to 27. But the issue underlying is so important. We've had IT in our workplaces for decades, but the extent of use and the speed of change, how it's affecting our jobs, our job market, the way we employ people, is really at a speed that we've not seen before. To give you an example, we carried out a survey of workers last year, and we saw that 1 in 3 workers reported that digital technology is being used to allocate their tasks, their working time, or their shifts. And the same amount, 1 in 3, has their work performance rated by a third party using digital technology. And in 1 in 4 cases, digital technology is being used to supervise their work or their behavior at work. Now, this can have positive or outcomes, but it can also raise some challenges. And amongst those are an increase in workload, which again, 1 in 3 reported, or increasingly working alone. That was the case for nearly half of all respondents, or having less autonomy in one's work, and a significant number also reported that. I mentioned the importance for the relevance for policy making, and there are a number of initiatives, legislative initiatives, for example, relating to digitalization, where the occupational aspect also has to be taken account of. And for example, we have the Artificial Intelligence Act, the directive on online platforms. Mm-hmm. There's also the revision of quite old directives, like the Display Screen Equipment Directive, which envisages the old technology from 30 years ago, and obviously things have moved on. So the campaign will last for 2 years, 24-month period. And in order to keep the interest and the focus alive through quite a long time, we'll have a priority area focus during the campaign. So for 4-month periods, we'll be looking at 5 different priority areas. The first one will be online platforms. Then we'll be looking at automation of tasks, whether physical tasks or cognitive tasks. Then working from home, telework, or working remotely. The use of artificial intelligence in managing workers. So whether that's human resource analytics software, or whether it's algorithmic management, as you'd find in platforms. And then the final topic will be on the use of new smart digital technology to help improve health and safety. For example, the use of augmented reality, virtual reality, or real-time sensing through wearables or smart personal protective equipment, and so on. First, I would like to acknowledge Eurogip's contribution to this report, because this is for the agency a very important report that you have summarized, because it's the first of a series where we are summarizing changes over time and how we see the challenges and the trends. And this is based on the EU Occupational Safety and Health Information System, which was an initiative started some years ago by the European Commission. And at that very start, Eurogip was amongst the organizations contributing to and defining and developing that. So thank you for your work then. If we're looking back to the Framework Directive, for example, in 1989 and onwards, overall, we've got a good body of legislation on occupational safety and health in Europe, 24 directives, and a lot of guidance material has been developed over the years, a lot of tools, a lot of training materials, and a lot of training carried out. So really, the knowledge has developed a lot. Over that period as well, accidents have dropped a lot. So we've had a 60% fall in fatal accidents since the mid-90s. And a lot of that is due to better prevention, but also due to better medical care. So many accidents that would have been fatal now are not, although they may give rise to severe life-changing injuries. At least in terms of the recognized occupational diseases like hearing loss, skin disease, cancer from certain substances, we've seen significant falls, so an improvement of the situation. And then finally, I think we've also become better at managing and protecting a diverse workforce. It's no longer focused so much on older men. We're looking now at young and old workers, more skilled and less skilled workers, more women in the workforce. We've got more migrants in the workforce. And there's a greater level of international cooperation. So some really positive aspects. If I look at those areas where the progress is not so clear, I'd say that from 2005 onwards, the share of our workforce that's exposed to physical safety and health risks like noise or vibration, dust, biological agents, high and low temperatures, and so on, has remained pretty much the same. It's not changed very much, and even in some sectors, we can see increases. So, for example, transport, logistics, and distribution. We've actually seen a worsening of the situation. And more people working, for example, in recycling, waste management, and healthcare. The same goes for ergonomic risks. So when we look at the data on, for example, repetitive movements, tiring positions, lifting and carrying heavy loads, or prolonged sitting, again, we see not much change, or in the case of prolonged sitting, an increase in prevalence. On the other hand, working time has remained more or less stable. When it comes to compliance in small businesses, this is a challenge. We see a very mixed picture depending on the situation. And in terms of self-employed, there's generally a poor level of protection, but quite some differences. And maybe overall, compared to the more traditional physical risks, we see a shift towards psychological and ergonomic risks. Lastly, I would say that maybe the areas of greatest concern that we identified, firstly, was this issue of compliance. So that we've got growing categories of workers who are mobile or working from home, or are working in care work, domestic work, seasonal workers, all through online platforms, or bogus self-employed who are not covered by the OSHA legislation or are not receiving the adequate protection at all. The situation for undeclared work, so those in illegal employment, is that they're not even visible in the statistics. So we know the situation is worse, but we're not even able to monitor it. So this is a real concern. I mentioned physical inactivity and prolonged sitting. That we did flag that as a concern. And then finally, that the situation across Europe is quite diverse. We see little convergence. So physical health risks and the perception of bad health is worst in member states from Eastern Europe, and then to a lesser extent Southern Europe, compared with the Central, Western, and Northern. And that when we look at psychosocial risks, the situation is the reverse. So when workers actually report worse situation in the North and Central and Western countries, and relatively better in the South and East. So that mixed picture is something that needs to be improved as well. Here at EU-OSHA, for around 10 years, when we first commissioned a study on crowd work, we identified early on then that one of the key issues is classifying the online worker through these platforms as either an employee or self-employed. the two main issues that are being negotiated there. On the one hand, this presumption of employment, and without having an employment status, in most countries, the health and safety regulation doesn't apply, and in practice, the protections are very, very poor. So this distinction of employment from bogus self-employment is key, and it's quite a difficult issue in the negotiations. The other aspect under this platform workers directive is the controls on algorithmic management, and I think here there are some very strong proposals that were put forward by the Commission around the principles of transparency. So when a system is put into place, the workers and their representatives should know what its aims are, how it works, have access to the data, that there should always be a human taking the most important decisions. So for example, somebody shouldn't be able to be fired or any important employment decisions be taken automatically. There needs to be a human involved. There's a right to review, and most importantly, the rules regarding psychological and health and safety risks. So the directive foresees some important safeguards for workers and their representatives in that sense, and establishes the right to inform and consult their representatives on the characteristic of the digital platform. So as I say, it's still obviously under negotiation, but I think the potential is to really strengthen workers' protection in online platforms. Then more broadly, the AI Act, or the Act on Artificial Intelligence, again, it's a provisional agreement that we have now, so we'll have to wait for a full analysis to see the impact, but it takes a risk-based approach. So a risk-based approach focused on ensuring citizens, not only workers, but citizens' health, safety, and fundamental rights, like the right to privacy or data protection. And this obviously applies in the workplace as well. Artificial intelligence is classed as unacceptable, and that's banned, high risk and limited risk. And we'll see how these classifications work in practice. There are obviously extra limitations when it comes to artificial intelligence that is classified as of a high risk. Specifically, in terms of the workplace, the proposal at the moment includes a ban on emotion recognition systems, so software that allows the detection of the emotional state of a worker in the workplace. At the same time, it gives an exemption for safety. You might imagine that this is to detect if somebody is falling asleep at the steering wheel when driving a vehicle or when operating a machine. But it's an example of where the limit is not so clear. So we'd have to see how that turns out in practice. And again, this act strengthens the principles of transparency and putting a human in control of the important decisions. So in summary, I think these initiatives have got big potential for improving protection of workers in the workplace in an area where it's very necessary because of the speed of progress that we were discussing earlier. But we'll need to wait a bit still to see what the final provisions are. My feeling is that, as a general comment, is that society in general, I don't think really understands the extent of the burden on society of poor working conditions in terms of entirely avoidable injuries, entirely avoidable ill health and deaths. My first job in occupational safety and health more than 30 years ago, it only existed because there was an accident. 167 workers died on an oil platform that exploded in 1988. And that terrible event meant that there was an investment, an enormous investment, a program of research on health and safety at work. And in a way, more recently, we've seen a big increase in interest, this time at European level, in occupational safety and health because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. But, Isabel, I mean, it shouldn't take events like this, tragic events, to move forward on occupational safety and health. If today was an average day, 9 or 10 workers would die in a work-related accident, and 550 to 600 will die from a work-related illness. This on its own should be sufficient incentive to take action. But I don't think that we're communicating well enough on these issues and communicating well enough outside of our own policy area and of our own target audiences. We need to get this message more broadly understood and mobilize the resources and the priority to really take action on improving workplace health and safety. I think we need to convince everybody, not just in our own field, as I say, and we need to do that by building up new knowledge, by carrying out research, by sharing existing knowledge and learning from each other. And I think that EU-OSHA and Eurogip have a very similar mission in this sense.
Merci William d'avoir partagé votre point de vue dans ce premier épisode des discussions d'Eurogip. À tous, nous vous donnons rendez-vous pour le prochain épisode. En attendant, suivez-nous sur notre site et nos réseaux sociaux.